I am here this afternoon with George Rodriguez. I met you in San Angelo when you were speaking at the San Angelo Tea Party, and so I appreciate you taking part of your time today here in San Antonio to speak with me. May I ask you to introduce yourself to my audience, kind of your background and what you do?
Sure. My name is George Rodriguez, and I am originally from San Antonio, but actually born in Laredo. We moved to San Antonio when I was 6 months old. I am a product of a bilingual, bicultural upbringing. My parents we spoke Spanish at home, but the family is about six generations Texan. We have one grandfather that immigrated legally. We have a card where he paid a dime to cross the border in 1900.
Wow.
But all of us, for generations, have lived on the South Texas border. And consequently, we kind of know a little bit about border politics, border culture, immigration, and border crime. And I worked with the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. on the 1986 immigration law, both the implementation as well as the actual writing of it. I also worked with in the Reagan administration on community relations. Got to go several occasions down to San Diego, Los Angeles, in Phoenix to watch in early 1980s the first impacts of international Latin American criminal activity, which has escalated way beyond now what it was then. Criminal
Probably
gangs.
seems kind of simplistic now, what they were doing then.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was at that point it was just criminals crossing. Now it's organized gangs.
Yeah.
I also worked on the issues of related to the criminal Cubans that Castro sent in 1979, and we were doing the cleanup under Reagan. We were doing cleaning up after that mess. So I've had quite a bit of involvement in the issue of immigration and the issue of the Hispanic community. I am also one of the first presidents of a Tea Party, a Hispanic president of a Tea Party. And I was president of the San Antonio Tea Party for 2 years. During that period was when we were investigated, so to speak, by the IRS.
Really?
So, yes.
What a minute.
So we were held up by them as far as our qualification as a 501c3. And I have been very, very involved since that time in speaking. I have retired back to San Antonio, and I've been very, very involved in speaking and being a conservative American of Mexican background, or Mexican descent, as I like to tell people, because there are very few of us. I feel that it's very important that people understand that when people talk about the Hispanic vote or the Hispanic community, I have to question what that is, because within the Hispanic community, it's like saying, well, let's talk about the European vote. When you talk about Italians, Poles, Germans.
True.
In our case, are you talking about Cubans, Puerto Ricans, even Mexicans? Are you talking about the Mexicans that just crossed the border? Are you talking about the Mexicans that have lived here for a couple of generations? Are you talking about the Hispanos, as they like to be called, that have been in northern New Mexico since the 1600s? Which exactly are you talking about?
Excellent point.
It is. We are very, very varied, and we have very, very different ideas on immigration, because some of us have not even been impacted on by immigration. The Cuban community has had a long-standing relationship with the State Department and with the Department of Immigration, where all they have to do is just touch the soil of the United States, and they are here legally. Puerto Ricans have never had a relationship with immigration because they're part of a commonwealth. They are considered citizens. Mexicans, and here's the kick right there, Mexicans have a culture, a cultural identity, a cultural affinity about the border, because to many Mexicans since 1846, the border was something that was imposed, that was something that was new to them. When the border was created in 1848, their families, properties, in some cases, were on both sides of the border.
Wow.
And so there was, because the United States wanted to put the war to bed and did not want bad relationships with their neighbor, what they did was they did not establish a strong border with Mexico. Consequently, it has become a cultural thing where you just go back and forth. That used to work very, very well back in the,
Back in the day.
back in the days. I mean, I remember that we would go, I had an aunt that married a Mexican man in Nuevo Laredo, and we used to go back and forth. We used to go over there, visit, they used to come over here. No problem. We were routinely asked by the Border Patrol as we crossed, coming back, are you U.S. citizens? No problem. We were used to that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what we've got now are tidal deaths of people. I have personally seen 20, 25 women, single women, under 30, with kids, crossing the border, introduce themselves to the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol processes them, and then puts them on a bus and sends them off. That's not helpful for our nation. It's not helpful for our nation when we've got a nation south of the border that tacitly encourages illegal immigration and doesn't care about the border. It doesn't help us when we've got nations south of the border, nations, not just Mexico, but lots of nations who are encouraging their poor, their unwanted, to come north.
Right.
It doesn't help us when we've got a president and a party that seems to look the other way completely when it comes to a border and seems to feel that we are responsible, the taxpayer is somehow responsible for all the problems in Latin America because we're an imperialist country or something. I'm not sure. They try to play American guilt on us.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that we have a border that's out of control. We have a group of people, an entire group of people, who are experiencing an immigration, a historical immigration experience like no other immigrant experience to the United States. Every immigrant experience to the United States, even Asians, they have come, they have acculturated and assimilated.
Yes.
Whether you were talking Europeans, whether you're talking Asians, the only folks that have not had that experience were the African slaves and Mexicans. Mexicans because their country was right next door, and for every Mexican or Mexican American or whatever you want to call them, American of Mexican descent as I like to refer to them, as for everyone that acculturated and moved up the ladder of success and became an American, 2 or 3 used to cross, starting the whole situation. Mm-hmm. Now, for every one that acculturates, 10 seem to cross. And not only is it 10, but it's not just Mexicans, it's all these others. Mm-hmm. Complicating the situation is this whole attitude and this whole approach to society nowadays in the United States of diversity. We don't have French-Canadian immigration like we have Latin American immigration. French-Canadian immigration, because we don't do that, we don't have French-Canadian stations popping up along the border and broadcasting in French. In the United States, I counted well over 1,000 radio stations in Spanish.
Oh my.
I have counted almost 100 television stations. And that's Telemundo and Univision and Radio Azteca and everybody else. These stations are inhibiting, in my opinion, the media, newspapers, radio, TV. Spanish language media is inhibiting the acculturation and the assimilation of Spanish speakers.
It would, naturally.
It does.
Because there's no need for them to learn the language.
And in large communities like San Antonio, like Los Angeles, like Houston, mm-hmm. in large communities, what's happening is that you've got colonies, large colonies of Spanish speakers growing up. And not only that, developing, growing, but being encouraged to be separated. You've got the politics of tribalism, as I call it.
Oh, that's
By
interesting.
the politics of tribalism, as I call it, by the left, by the progressives, by the Democrats, who insist on appealing to groups and encouraging group identity. Feminists, blacks, Asians, and of course the Hispanics. And they fan the flame of separatism in my book. On top of that, we've got the very, very recent situation that exhibits that, in my opinion, is a great example of it. The situation with Jorge Ramos and Trump, where Jorge Ramos started screaming, did not want to sit down, did not want to take his turn, felt entitled, felt that he was somehow the person, the most important person in the room, had to ask the question, and then on top of that he starts screaming that he is an immigrant and he has the rights. Let me tell you, as, again, an American of Mexican descent, fully bilingual, I studied in Mexico City, I lived in Mexico City, we spoke Spanish at home, I read it and write it, I can assimilate very easily on the other side of the border. But I'm an American. I get very, very choked up when I go to Independence Hall in Philadelphia. I get very, very emotional when I see Plymouth Rock. I get very, very patriotic when I see Baltimore Harbor and Fort McHenry. That's me, because that is what I am. I'm an American. Unfortunately, we've got folks fanning the flames of separatism, and that's not good.
It divides.
It's divisive. It's contradictory to a country which is already made of so many ethnic, religious, racial groups. The only thing that we have in common should be the Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
And our patriotism for the country. That should be. But when you begin to claim that the Constitution is not serving them right, and then when you claim divisiveness, I mean, we're headed down the balkanization of our nation. We are going to create, tribalism. We are going to create ethnic enclaves that will compete with one another. And that's not good for our nation. That is not good for our nation. I feel very, very strongly that illegal immigration, and that's what it is, illegal. Not immigration, but
Right.
illegal immigration. Illegal immigration has got to be addressed in three ways.
Okay.
First of all, it's got to be addressed in the sense that we have got to do something at the border as well as at all ports of entry for somebody that has overstayed or entered illegally.
Okay.
We've got to do something. And that means either deport them. Well, no, that's what it means. It means deport them.
Right.
And very sadly, politicians don't want to say that. They got to be deported.
It's a hard word.
It's a very hard word, but that's what you got to do. You break the law to come into the United States.
There has to be consequences.
There has to be a consequence.
Yes.
You can't go into a Dallas Cowboy game without a ticket. And in some cases, you got to stand in line. Shock.
True.
Shock. You can't get in there without a ticket. And then once you get in there without a ticket, you can't demand a free Coke and a hot dog afterwards, not to mention a great seat. No. You got to pay for it.
Love the analogy.
You got to pay for it. So the situation that we've got is there's got to be a punishment. The second thing that's got to happen is that we've got to stop the incentives, the rewards, the magnets that bring illegal aliens here. And that starts with illegal employment. That starts with benefits. That's, and benefits can be everything from education to health to,
Yes.
While you provide these magnets, people have every intention of coming and staying
Yes.
because they're being rewarded.
Because
And
there's
we
no
can't-
reason not to.
You can't do that. So that's number three, or number two. Number three is the whole aspect of it, the whole aspect that there is no punishment. There is no punishment for any of this. Okay? And what we need to do is not only build a wall at the border. I really believe that, because our friends south of the border are not doing their part. I'm sorry.
Right.
So we've got to build a wall. And then at the same time, we have got to do something to provide incentives to all those people that send their unwanted. We give tons and tons of foreign money to all of these nations. We give tons and tons of foreign money. We need to tell them either we're going to give you the money so you can take care of your folks over there, or we're going to keep it. And I guarantee that these politicians in these communities will do something about it. We have also got to stop feeling guilty.
That's true. That's become a whole mindset that's being...
The whole approach
yeah.
To the situation in, to a newscast about the situation in Europe where they're facing a tremendous problem right now with immigrants. The problem that we've got, my friends, is that Western societies are being made to feel guilty because they are successful.
Yes.
And, you know, I mean, just like...
But unless you come and assimilate in,
That's right.
you will not be successful. You'll pull it back down.
That's exactly right. People have got to understand that there are cultures that are successful for a reason.
Exactly.
Nations are successful because of the culture. And a lesser nation is not successful for a reason. You know, I'm sorry, you know, I love to hear people talk extensively about how advanced the Maya and the Aztec were and how wonderful. I had one professor tell me that Christianity and the Aztec religion were just as good as each other, to which I had to remind him real quick. I guess so, except for the fact that one practiced human sacrifice and cannibalism. So, you know, there is a reason why Western Europe was able to spread and colonize the rest of the world, and it was the culture. And, you know, the rest, I mean, there's a reason why we're not speaking Arabic yet, why we're not speaking Arabic, why we're not speaking
German.
I mean, there's a reason for that. And so what people need to understand is that we cannot feel guilty for being successful. We can't. And the United States needs to become a melting pot again, as it once was.
Do you think that we need to just shut down immigration totally, both legal and illegal, for a season? Because we've got, do you feel that we have issues with all the illegal immigrants we have within our country now, and to do something along that line?
I do. I believe that, you know, just like you have to put a tourniquet to stop a hemorrhage, this is the opposite. This is the opposite. We are taking in much more than we are able to handle.
Yes.
So there has to be a choke point, there has to be a tourniquet applied until you can assimilate and until you can ingest. I mean, just like somebody that overeats, you know, just like somebody who overeats, they have got to, I mean, the body will react. We are in a period right now where there is overreaction. Everything that's happening with Trump and and the people who are so who are flocking to him and listening to him and all excited, that's a reaction to this border hemorrhaging that we've got. I mean, it really is. And I guarantee, again, that there are many, many, many people of Latino descent, like myself, who support that. That is, you know, we've got to stop the magnets. We've got to deport, and we've got to build a wall. The situation that we've got is that we can't continue just to turn our heads away. One of the things that people don't understand on the issue of immigration is, you know, some of them just come to work. A worker program is one thing, but we have 93 million people underemployed, unemployed, right now.
A lot of them just gave up.
And the situation that we've got with those folks is that those folks, some of them could be working but aren't. In 1986, when I worked on the immigration law, we did a study of welfare versus entry-level work in California. And we found that the benefits, the wages were equal of an entry-level job and welfare benefits, equal.
Ooh.
So you tell me, somebody is not going to be stupid if they say, well, why should I go work when I can get the same thing by staying home?
Yeah.
You know, so one of the things that needs to happen is that we need to address that whole issue of welfare, of workfare.
All the benefits.
All of those benefits, because I guarantee that in the 93 million, there are some people who are very capable of working. who are not.
I heard a statistic recently, and I'm sorry I can't quote the source at the moment, but that an average 20, 30-year-old woman with 2 children without working brings in about $57,000 a year, and if she so chose to do entry level to begin, she'd take such a tremendous cut in pay, she can't afford to go to work.
Exactly. People have been rewarded for doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
People have been rewarded for entering the country illegally. People have been rewarded for having kids out of wedlock. And not taking care of them.
Right.
You know, where's the daddy?
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I was also a HUD director. And one of the places that I was a HUD director at was in the city of Houston. And in the city of Houston, we had an apartment complex in North Houston near Acres Home. And this apartment complex was something like 400 apartment units.
Yeah.
Virtually every single one of those apartments had a single woman with kids in it. A single woman with kids in it. The police used to have a terrible, terrible time at that property because every Saturday, boyfriends would show up, you know, and in some cases they were visiting the same girl or woman. And, you know, it was a complete disaster. However, it was subsidized by the government, and the ladies received assistance for their kids.
Right.
In some cases, they didn't even use the assistance for their kids, they used it for their boyfriends. And these are the things that we need to, at some point in our history, we started rewarding the wrong things.
That's right.
And we need to go back to letting life be its own reward. And that
we
sounds
started
awful.
moving away from Christian principles.
You got it.
And
The family is no
yeah,
longer important.
And that was the core.
The family is no longer important.
Yeah.
The family, the family, the family.
Now, that's always been something that's been very strong in the Hispanic.
And let me tell you, this is very, very interesting because the Hispanic community, this is something that unfortunately a lot of Republicans who don't want to talk about social issues are ignoring. But one of the things that we found in this past election, this past state election here in Texas, was that Wendy Davis, the Democrat who was pro-abortion, not to mention pro-gay marriage, she lost 5 Hispanic counties deep in South Texas. Big time she lost them. She lost them to a virtual unknown in the primary, in the Democratic primary, lost them to a virtual unknown. And the reason that she lost them was because she went in there with their social agenda. And it didn't play well in the Hispanic community.
Right.
Did not play well. She had alternate lifestyle people with her. She preached abortions. She carried the social agenda on her sleeve.
Yeah.
And it turned people off. That is something that we need to understand. Another thing that we need to understand is that there was a Pew research study that was done about last year sometime that showed that the Hispanic family, whether the Hispanic family is Central American, Argentine, Mexican, the Latino family, as it moves into acculturation and assimilation in the United States, the family was disintegrating.
Breaking down. Oh.
The family was disintegrating.
And just culturally, it's always been so rich and strong in the Hispanic culture. And so that's very disheartening, but
it's shocking, but it's very telling. Because that used to not happen.
No.
That used to not happen. The Hispanic family was always very, very tight and very, very
they got Americanized.
And you know, I mean, we're seeing that over and over again, and it's happening. You know, it happened with the black family. You know, after the war on poverty began, the black family disintegrated, and look at what we've got now.
Yeah. So how do we, as let's say Republican, conservative, how do we begin reaching out to the Hispanic community and helping them connect their core principles, those that are still surviving, and pump some life back into those that are barely hanging on, and help them understand the difference in mindset between the Republican, say, party and the Democratic Party, or conservative and liberal, however you want to label it, to understand where their alignment should be based on their culture and what is really heartfelt and believed.
Well, the Christian principles have got to be encouraged. Unfortunately, the left, the liberals, the Democrats, they understand that too. And there are many, many Saul Alinsky organizations like Valley Interfaith, like San Antonio's Cops Metro.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
They are very, very active in the churches with their antisocial agenda.
And we have it in San Angelo, WTOS, West
Exactly.
Texas Organizing at it.
And they are not exposed.
Yeah.
They are not exposed. What we need to do is get ministers to understand that their parishioners, their flocks, are in danger.
Yes.
Not just politically, they are spiritually in danger. And what is happening to these folks is that secularism is being brought into their lives big time, and when you bring in secularism, by definition, morals go out the window. Where there is no morality, anything goes. Where there's no sense of right and wrong, everything goes. I really do believe that the issue of undermining American values and undermining America's democracy and the ideals that built America are now based on the idea of the same-sex agenda, because ultimately, if you undermine the morality, and if anything goes,
Well, respect is gone.
respect is gone.
Yeah.
The immorality. Again, let me clarify that if a dog wants to be treated like a cat, fine. I say great. Let's treat that dog like a cat. Vice versa. But if there is legislation that tells me that I have to treat a dog like a cat, that's different.
Yeah.
That's different from me voluntarily saying and having the right to say, well, it's a dog, but he wants to be a cat, no problem. On the other hand, if I've got legislation that tells me I have got to say that cat is a dog, that's very different. That is very, very different, because now the government is telling me what I know is not true.
And that goes against principles,
It goes against
values,
exactly.
faith,
Exactly.
morals.
Same thing. Right now, an illegal alien, we're told they're not really illegal, they're just immigrants. That's not true.
No.
It's not true. What part of the word illegal do you not understand?
Yeah,
You know?
where's the immigrant?
Yeah.
Who
So
went through the line?
we have now reached a stage in society where we're lying to ourselves on many things. And that's not good. That's not good, because we're going to develop a society that's psychotic.
If it's not already.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary to think the generation that's coming up right now, their mindset,
Yeah.
because of the things that they're exposed to, and just their textbooks and all the different things that make up their daily life, and television, what they see as being the norm on television.
That's exactly right.
And
That's
television
exactly
is a huge influence.
right. That's exactly right. And, it's really scary that many of these young kids are more interested in entertainment than they are in the facts, the news,
Yeah,
the current
exactly.
events in the entertainment factory.
Yeah.
And we need, we need a society that's based on morality, on right and wrong. And
When we were kids, there was right and wrong.
Yeah,
Things were
exactly.
black or white.
That's exactly
And now
right.
they're gray, and you can't find black, and you can't
No,
find white.
You can't, because, it's
There's
it's
an exception.
hateful. You're not supposed to be, I am told over and over again, why are you so judgmental? Well, because, I need to be.
That's right, yeah.
I need to be, because that's what life is like.
Yeah.
I need to be judgmental if I'm walking into a quicksand, or if I'm walking just on some mud.
Yeah.
I need to be judgmental. I need to be judgmental if I'm getting too close to a wasp nest, or if it's, just a tree that's got a hole in it. I need to be judgmental.
Right.
And if people don't understand that, then we're really, really in a psychotic situation. Because when they get stung, when they begin to sink, then they blame everybody. And it's not anybody, you have to shoulder responsibility for something.
One of the other issues we have here in Texas, and I forgot the count, is sanctuary cities.
Oh, yes. Yes.
How many do we have here in Texas? Do you
I
know?
am not sure. I think last count that I had made was
13 is the number I keep hearing in my head.
there was 13, but what's really incredible is that one is being considered. One community is considering becoming one, and that's Corsicana, little old Corsicana, Texas, is being pressured to become a sanctuary city.
Why?
Because there was an immigration raid, a border patrol raid, and they picked up about 10, 12 people, among them some criminals, and immediately the liberal Hispanic community came out and demanded that there no longer be any kind of cooperation between local law enforcement and the immigration folks, which I think is insane, absolutely insane.
How can American citizens feel protected if there's nothing?
You can't. Every single time that we have looked at an illegal alien committing a crime, it has been a direct result of them hiding in plain sight in a sanctuary city, and the sanctuary city not wanting to do anything about it. You know, so again, enforcement of the law. The law is very black and white. You enforce it.
Right.
But these folks, well, no, they're refugees, or no, they're not really breaking a major law. Well, you know.
It's like a little sin versus a big sin?
Exactly. And it's very, very frustrating to argue with these people who seem to live life like a feather in the wind. It's very, very difficult, because what they call freedom is actuality, they're just blowing in the wind.
Is San Antonio a sanctuary city?
San Antonio has thought about it, but we've been able to prevent it. However, we are on the verge right now of hiring the police chief of Austin, Texas. And the police chief of Austin, Texas is very famous for two things. He has spoken out extensively to protect illegal aliens. He's a police chief, and he's spoken extensively about protecting them. And he has also been very, very outspoken on gun ownership, on private gun ownership. So, we're trying to do our best to inform everybody and tell them that there is a...
So his name surfaced really quick. I understand, I believe your police chief, I believe I heard, committed suicide. And so that was a very short time frame, and so they've already wow. They don't go through a full vetting and everyone...
There is supposedly there has been an application process that was very, very quick.
Really?
And even more so, which even is more upsetting to me, is that the people that that helped to screen the applicants, as well as the applications, were a Hispanic civil rights organization, LULAC, very leftist, the NAACP, and the gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual folks. Those three.
Really?
And they are the ones that are helping to screen. So I'm sure we're going to get somebody conservative. I'm sure we're going to get somebody who's not,
Isn't that the thing about I shouldn't say, but the fox guard and the hen house?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But they've got these protected classes who are helping to screen for the police chief. We have a tremendous temporary...
Was there anyone else?
There are 5 individuals. 4 of them are from outside. 3 of them are from outside of Texas. One from one from Phoenix. One from Chicago, I believe, and then.
You're talking about applicants, but I mean those are the only 3 decisions.
Those are the only 3.
So there is no conservative. There is no one from the faith-based. There's no one.
Faith-based.
No. Very interesting.
No.
Who selected?
The city manager is a very liberal leftist woman that we have here in San Antonio, who has spent San Antonio into indebted San Antonio beyond belief. We are the most in debt.
You're second in Texas.
We're
Are you
first
number one?
per capita in debt.
Oh, okay, yes, that is correct,
And
and
then
second
we're
on,
second only to Houston.
that's right, yes. I just
Second
heard that
only to Houston.
yesterday, where they were talking about forced annexation.
Now they're,
And, yeah.
because. And
To
they make
pay
no
the debt
bones
of what-
To pay the debt, they make no bones
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
They want to annex 52 to 58,000 people.
Well, there's two different sections, and the total will be 250,000 people. I understand from the meeting yesterday on that particular topic in Austin.
It is, and again, one of the things that I keep insisting to our local conservatives is that we've got to keep our eye on local community issues. The defense, I tell everybody that the defense of freedom and liberty starts in our backyard.
It does.
Because by the time that an issue gets to Austin, or worse, DC, it's very, very difficult to beat it.
Yeah.
The whole sanctuary city issue didn't raise its head a lot until a woman got shot in San Francisco, and now in Washington they're trying to do something about it. No. The local communities, we should tell our city councilmen and our county commissioners what to do. We should tell them, here is where we need to fight that battle. The same thing with high taxes, the same thing with rail systems that are not necessary, the same thing with the gay ordinances, the gay rights ordinances.
Right.
All of these things need to be fought locally. We've got a big battle with Planned Parenthood right now, where the city, again, the city bureaucracy, because it is so dominated by leftist progressives, the city bureaucracy has gone out of its way to allow zoning regulations, zoning laws, zoning ordinances to be ignored. And and Planned Parenthood has gone in spite of the local neighborhood being against it being located there. They've gone ahead and steamrolled it.
Wow.
And again, the question comes up, how do we stop that? Well, I'll tell you, by unelecting that city councilman.
That's right.
So that the next city councilman will not be afraid to tell the city manager what to do. Better yet, let's fire her along with it.
I heard through another interview that I did that the NDO ordinance actually, thanks to Mayor Castro, birthed the churches here in this community coming together.
Exactly.
And how they worked to elect your current mayor against who was a given that was going to win.
Exactly.
And so that's wonderful that they're starting to take back some ground.
We have, I thought that the election, this past mayoral election, was very historic, and it sent a political seismic shock through the political establishment in San Antonio, because historically the political establishment has been comprised of liberal Hispanic Democrats and powerful business interests. Yeah. And they had already anointed Leticia Van de Putte to be the next mayor.
Well, she was endorsed. Everybody in the world endorsed her.
Everybody got in line. Everybody would, do their due diligence of standing behind her, et cetera, et cetera. However, the churches, the black churches, the Hispanic churches, the white churches, unified
together
and overcame it and sent a big, big message.
I love
and
it.
we, I am definitely trying to help fan that flame, because that, people need to understand that the local government is taking advantage of it.
Do you see that the city employees run the city more than your city council?
Oh, definitely.
Because we're having that same type deal in San Angelo.
It is a bureaucracy that has gotten out of control.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it gets out of control is because the city manager, who wants autonomy, who wants power, begins to tell the city council, let us do our job, let us do our job, let us do our job.
Yeah.
However, in the process of telling them, let us do our job, they start to work hand in foot with these special interests.
Yes.
To whom they cater.
Yes.
And so then the special interests come back, and in catering to the government bureaucracy, what they do is that they support and fund the campaigns of puppets that are going to do nothing but stand there. Yeah. We have had that over and over again here in San Antonio, where somebody will go to their city council representative, and their city council representative will literally tell them, I can't do that much because the city government
while we just have a few minutes left, I know one other particular issue at the state level in the House has been the Speaker of the House.
Yes.
And he happens to cover part of San Antonio.
Where
And
we're sitting right now.
lovely. And so I understand that we do have someone who is challenging him,
Yes.
not to be the speaker, but for his district.
His district.
And Jeff Judson. So how does the local community feel about this? Because how long has Joe Straus been the representative?
He's been representative, I believe, about 14 years, but he's been speaker, about 6 years now?
Something like that,
Yeah,
yes.
6 years now. Now, Joe Straus he is the epitome of a political boss with the establishment's consent. Joe Straus straddles the political spectrum and caters to special interests big time. He was elected with 100% of the Democrats in the House, 100%. And so if that's the case, then he's going to cater to their needs. One of the things that's very aggravating to me is that Joe Straus is now the chairman of some national GOP committee that is supposed to help elect or convert more state houses across the nation, more state houses to the Republican side. And that's really infuriating to me because he has never lifted a finger to help any of the Republican Latino candidates in South Texas, because all of those Democrat Latinos voted for him. This past election, there were several very, very qualified Latino Republicans that ran for office. And he did not lift a doggone finger to help any of them, because the guys that elected him are the guys who would be challenged. So that really, really irritates me when we have that kind of a situation that he is pretending to be this when in actuality he's something else.
Yeah.
The other thing that really irritates the heck out of me is how he ignores the Republican platform. The Republican platform was put together by Republican representatives from the party all over the state.
Yes. At the state convention.
At the state convention.
Yes.
That's who did it. The grassroots folks put it together. For him to dismiss it is absolutely arrogant.
Perfect.
And ridiculous, because what he does then is he is saying, I know more than what you guys do. The establishment, the San Antonio establishment, has benefited tremendously from Joe Straus being elected.
Sure.
From him being the speaker. He and Leticia Vandepute pushed through a legislative action, not this legislative year, but the last time, 2 years ago, where they allowed downtown city parklands to be sold for development to developers without having to go through a public vote. So here, Leticia and him are always talking about civil rights and about the right to vote. Effectively took it away from voters in San Antonio.
Wow.
And the only people that profited from it were big-time developers who are busy trying to cater to the tourist industry downtown.
Downstairs.
Downtown.
Yeah.
He also killed the law that the legislation that was deemed to protect people from getting swallowed up by cities. He killed it, and again, taking away the people's right to vote.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a great deal of criticism. I am one of his constituents, and I don't believe he's ever treated me with respect, because I am a conservative.
What are you hearing in the community with his position being challenged now?
What
Is
I
that
hear,
being,
a lot of folks are very, very excited, but a lot of folks are very fearful. Very, very fearful
of what they'll lose?
of what they'll lose if he gets elected. Immediately they say, well, if Jeff comes in, that's great and dandy because Jeff's a nice guy. But, we've got all these connections, we get all these benefits, we get all this from
Yeah.
Joe Straus. Now what?
All right, let me ask you this. With the makeup of this community that you're very familiar with, which way do you think they'll lean?
That's a good question. One of the problems that we've had with this community is that historically it has been very, very uninformed. It is
That's true everywhere.
I know.
Everyone's too busy.
But here, the problem that we've got here is that this is Joe Straus's district is above medium income.
Mm-hmm.
It's these people are
They're affluent, they're blowing and going and doing.
well-heeled, well-educated.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is amazing to me that they don't understand what this guy is doing. And I think that the reason that they don't understand it is because they hear the great things from the San Antonio Express, the liberal San Antonio Express that supports him. They hear the great things he's doing, but they don't hear any of the negative because they're too busy watching Fox News. And when they hear negative about what Obama's doing,
Right.
but not what's
Not
happening
on
in
the
their own
state.
backyard.
Exactly.
And we're doing our best. We are doing our best to
Now
inform and educate.
you have a radio show. Tell me about what you do.
We have a webcast called Raging Elephants Radio.
Okay.
Our webcast is, you can hear it on your computer or iPhone. And our webcast is specifically Texas-centered.
Okay.
It specifically talks about issues and events that are happening in Texas. My show from 2 to 4, Monday through Friday, or from 4 to 6 rather, 4 to 6 Central Time.
You should know your time.
Yeah, 4 to 6. And it is specifically about South Texas and about what's happening with Joe Straus, et cetera, and what's happening on the border. We're very happy to have been the first ones to interview the Border Patrol last year, who started telling us that there was an increase of young people coming across the border. And from that, Breitbart picked it up, and eventually Fox picked it up, and then
even
everybody
Huffington
else.
Post picked it up.
The Huffington Post. Oh, there's lots of kids coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're turning into the orphanage of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
So and it's and what we're endeavoring to do is inform and educate. It's very important, in my opinion, that we connect the dots for people so that they can understand. Look,
So
this is
true.
what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what's happening.
And this will be the end result if we
And
go
that's
this
it.
way. And I agree.
One of the things that we have been very, very we've been harping on lately is the inflated prices of the inflated appraisals of property in San Antonio and in Austin.
Yeah.
Because of the boom, these
San
prices
Angelo,
have been
yeah.
really, really inflated, and the taxing districts have turned around and said, well, since they're appraised at that level, we're going to tax you at that level. Mm-hmm. So we're getting a double whammy, and it's false. It's.
That's right. Well, and because of that, there's something in the rule book that says that then all the other cities have to come within a certain percent
That's right.
of that. And so we, out in San Angelo, Texas, really
The
got,
ripples.
oh yeah, we got the impact
The
big
ripples.
time.
The ripples.
And, well, anyway, that's a whole nother story.
That's another story.
But tell, here in San Antonio, if they wanted to hear you on the radio, because where do San Angeloans and West Texans come for the weekend? San Antonio. So what is the,
Well, they can hear us in San Angelo too.
okay,
All they have to do is just go to their computer and tap in RagingElephantsRadio.com.
all right,
RagingElephantsRadio.com.
Good.
And you can
Okay.
hear us anywhere in the world.
all right. And then on the radio dial here,
No, it's on a webcast.
it's just totally
a
online.
webcast. It's on a
Okay,
webcast.
and it's just audio on
It's
the.
just audio.
Okay,
Yeah.
very
Audio.
good, very good.
Yeah. So, well, I really, again, I want to encourage everybody, please, please, please understand that the defense of liberty and freedom starts in your own backyard.
Yeah.
If we try to do something about it when it's already in Austin, or worse, when it's already in Washington, it's so much more difficult.
Yeah.
But it's so much more easy if you get the attention and do something with your city councilman, or your county commissioners.
Yeah.
Those are the folks that need to get your attention.
Exactly.
Don't let them off the hook.
I agree with that. George, thank you so much for your time this
Thank
afternoon. When I'm back again, I think there's more we could talk about
definitely.
without any question.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Anytime you'd like, let me know, and I'll be more than happy and available.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.